if any of the children who are part of RCBC, Mario, or Harry, or Rosie, or Aaron J., would be in a place such that they could have no medical care, struggle to get basic food on a daily basis, had no access to education, how much our heart would bleed and go out for them. And this is what this is all about.
Well, thank you for having me this morning, coming here. Very much as that says, I want this to be a celebration because several of you already sponsor as a church and individually. So as much as informing you about compassion, this is going to be a bit of a celebration and a thank you for what you're already doing. So, just in this few minutes, I wanted us to get to think about what do you think compassion is? If I said to you, can you define the word compassion? Anybody want to throw out some ideas? Yeah, go on.
Empathy for somebody else's situation.
Yeah, yeah.
Love.
Love, yeah.
Empathy.
Empathy. Yeah, it's all part of it. Do you know, since I've worked for Compassion, it's something that we quite often try and think, well, what does it really mean? Get to the heart of what compassion means. So the other day I decided to do a search and for the word compassion in the Bible. And I came up with 81 different verses. And as I looked through the Old Testament, I think this verse summed up what the Old Testament says about compassion. Exodus 34:6 says, and this is when the Lord passed in front of Moses, and he said, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. So some of those ideas that you've just thrown out. And that idea is picked up through the whole of the Old Testament, Kings, Nehemiah, Psalms, Isaiah. But in the New Testament, we actually see compassion defined in Jesus, the Son of God. We see what compassion is as it's lived out through Jesus. As he healed the sick, he fed the hungry, he taught those who he saw as being lost. It says in Matthew 9, sheep without a shepherd. He had meals with the outcasts. And we began to see what compassion really is. And as I looked at some of the New Testament ones, I was amazed at how he continued to show compassion when he was tired, when he was sad, when he was hungry. I'm not sure I'm always that good at caring when I'm feeling grumpy and tired. But these verses in Matthew 14 I want to read to you come just after Jesus has heard that John the Baptist has been beheaded. So his cousin, close friend that he loved, he's just heard that he's been killed. And it says this: when Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, well, how would you feel? Okay, you've just been bereaved, you've just gone somewhere quiet. If I'm honest, my heart says, just go away. I want to be on my own, I want to be quiet. But what does the Bible say about Jesus? When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. So I'm suggesting today that I think the best summary of compassion is caring in action. That's what Jesus did, isn't it? He saw the need and he cared, but he actually did something about it. So it's all those aspects. We can have love for somebody, but it's having the action as well with the caring. Now, when we look at all that, I know that I will struggle with that sort of compassion, my own heart. So I have to pray that the Holy Spirit will fill me with Jesus's compassion for the lost, for the sick, for the hungry. And that's my prayer this morning for you as well. As a bit later on, I go to share a bit more about the work of the charity Compassion UK, part of Compassion International, as Erica said. and to see how they are changing lives and releasing children from poverty in the name of Jesus. So for 60 years, they have been, sorry, let's go on one more. For 60 years, they've been active in supporting children, and now there are around 2 million children supported by partners in the country, 7,000 church partners working with compassion in 25 of the poorest countries of the world. So, I want to take you to an Asian slum where a little boy is living with his mother and his father and his sister. And they live in a shanty house made of bricks with a tin roof. And it's no bigger than the average bathroom in the UK. So think of your bathroom, that's their whole house. There are around 10,000 people living in that slum, and there are only 2 toilets and 1 tap. So where do you go to the toilet? You're not going to queue, are you, at one of those 2 toilets? But this is the life that Jani was born into. As a child, oh, sorry, that's the drains. That's where you go to the toilet. I knew I'd missed one out. That's where you have to go to the toilet. And then when it rains, it floods excrement through your house. So that is the life that Jani was born into. As a child, he was introduced to the harsh realities of living in poverty, not having the basic needs. But in his own words, this is what he says. This wasn't our greatest challenge. It was the mental, spiritual, emotional impact of poverty. Because poverty isn't just a lack of food or shelter or clothes. Poverty tells you you don't matter. It tells you not to dream. And at the heart, poverty is a lack of hope. Now, we may not have experienced things quite as bad as Jani, but during this pandemic, I suspect that all of us have struggled in different ways and may have made us question, where is hope? Unfortunately, it is the poorest of the poor that suffer the most. And in countries where there is no NHS, there is no welfare state, and where people have to work to eat, or they don't eat. And unfortunately, it's now predicted that since the worldwide pandemic, a further 150 million more people will fall into poverty. Now, I've started by painting a pretty bleak, negative picture of what poverty is like around the world. And we can start to feel hopeless ourselves when we're faced with those sort of statistics, can't we? But although poverty might steal hope, Jesus brings hope.
Amen.
Now, during lockdown, this next Bible verse became very special to me. Romans 15:13. It says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit." I just love the way it works through that verse and links. It's a prayer that we're filled with hope, that we'll have joy and peace. But when does it happen? It happens when we trust in him. And why does it happen? So that we overflow with hope. But is it in our strength? No, it's in the power of the Holy Spirit. So in the next few minutes, I'd like to introduce you to some people who have found hope. I want to show you what Jesus is doing, showing his compassion through the charity Compassion International, bringing hope and changing lives. In fact, saving lives, as you will see. So first of all, let me finish off Jani's story. For Jani went on to experience all that compassion has to offer. A sponsor was found for him when he was 4 years old, and he joined the Compassion Project that was run by his local church. He was the first child in his family to ever go to school. And his proudest moment, he said, was teaching his mum and dad to be able to write their names. He could now see a doctor when he was ill. He had food. He had emotional, social, spiritual support. And the family was given hope. Hope to break the cycle of poverty. But he says that the very best thing was that they introduced him to Jesus. And his whole family have now become Christians and following Christ. So his life really was saved. Johnny went on to university. He gained a degree. He's married, has a family of his own, and he's founded a charity supporting children in residential care to become independent. And he has an absolute passion to bring the same hope of Jesus to others. And Chris and I have actually met him and heard him speak personally. Now, the second person I want to introduce you to is little Enoch. Enoch is 7 years old and he lives in Honduras. Now, I know you sponsor a child in Haiti, but if you go west a little bit and you hit Central America, there is Honduras and Enoch. And he's actually sponsored by a friend of mine, Katie, who lives here in Doncaster. And just on Wednesday, she messaged me to say that she had had a letter written, not actually by Enoch, but by his older brother, who said his father was sitting there too as he wrote, to let her know that Enoch had just had heart surgery. He was now recovering at home, and they praised God that he was doing well, and asked Katie to pray that God would heal him quickly, and he would be healthy again. Now, Katie and I were so emotional, and I'm still holding it together just here, with that news, to realise that without the support of Compassion, Enoch here would be dead. His family could not afford medical bills. There's no NHS, so he would be dead. But he's there, alive, photographed before us. The fact that Katie was moved to sponsor him literally saved his life. And actually, she was telling me later that she'd been sponsoring another child, and that child had finished the programme or come off the programme. And she was said, do you want to choose a child? And she said, I can't really choose. Will you choose one for me that has the greatest need? And she was given Enoch. And she says now as she looks back, she sees God's hand in that Enoch was sponsored by her at the right time. And he didn't have to wait. Whereas some children can wait months or even over a year for a sponsor. He had a sponsor and he's now alive. Humbling, isn't it? I find it really humbling to know that the tiny little bit that we can do, God takes and grows it into amazing things. And I want to encourage those of you who are involved in sponsorship. This is no small thing you are doing. Your sponsorship money, your prayers, your support are changing lives completely. They're saving lives and bringing people to Jesus. Now, Enoch's family also asked that we would pray for this pandemic, that it would end soon and that God would heal everyone that had been affected by the virus. And I know many people have been wondering, well, what's happening to the sponsored children during the worldwide pandemic? Are letters getting through? Now, you may have received letters like we heard about earlier with the puppet. You may have received letters like these, or they may have taken a little longer to get through. Actually, South America and that area, it's harder for letters to get through. But I want to assure you that in all the countries where there are compassion projects, the projects have actually had to close. But because they're run by local churches, the churches are still active and your sponsorship money is still getting through, along with money that was raised by a special COVID-19 emergency fund that was set up. And so the local churches have been able to support families to continue to go out and visit them. Sometimes that's miles on foot into the forest or up a mountain, which is why things take a lot longer. So during COVID times, just to encourage you, things are still going on. They've given out over 7 million hygiene kits and also been able to educate people in the use of masks and sanitisers, even teaching them how to make sanitiser, and that's more than I know, and to make hand washing stations from plastic containers like you see here. They've given away and distributed nearly 11 million food packs to starving families. They've provided medical support and cash where needed. So just a little update. Things are still happening even in COVID times. Now Chris and I actually went to Kenya in April. That's not actually us, but we went. I thought I'll just find a nice African photograph. You might be wondering, how did you do that? There's no flights going in the middle of a pandemic, travel not allowed to Kenya. Well, we actually went on a virtual internet visit that was organised by Compassion, and through the wonders of Zoom technology, we were able to live meet people through Zoom. The pastors at churches in Kenya, the Compassion leaders in Kenya, and young people like Brenda and David. And these two have graduated from Compassion projects. And we heard some of their stories, which I haven't got time to tell you this morning. But the highlight for us is the next person that I want to introduce you to. And as you meet her and hear her story, just bear in mind as you look at Brenda and David here, that they started out their life very much, and you can see the change, as Gloria did. So meet Gloria. Gloria is 9. She actually welcomed us to her home on Zoom. They took the computers in, the Compassion staff, and went into her home to link us up. And we were able to ask questions and find out about her circumstances. Her mother and 8 children live in a 10-foot by 10-foot room in the slum in Kenya. And when their father died, well, the mother said, she told us, she could have gone and married somebody else and had a good life, been cared for, looked after. But the new husband wouldn't have accepted her children. So she chose to stay with her children, to keep the family together. But with the pandemic, the work that she could find stopped and things were tough. But God is changing their situation and bringing hope. Because Gloria is a Compassion-sponsored child. And we were able to give them, and this was many tears, we were able to give a gift. Somebody brought the gift in, and we were able to watch the family open the gift that we brought for them. They were so excited as they unpacked rice, flour, oil, soap. So excited that they would have a meal that day. So I'm hoping you're beginning to see a little bit of how sponsorship and how sponsoring one child in a family has an effect on so many more people. It's like, I like to call it a ripple effect. You know when you drop a stone in and you see the ripples go? Well, you might feel a little bit like that tiny pebble dropped into the water. You might feel that you can't do very much. But if you give that pebble to God, the ripples that come out, they touch the child, but it also goes on to touch the family. It goes on to touch their village, their community, their Compassion project, and even in some cases their country, where people have gone on into leadership of their country. So I love that picture. Just remember that picture of the ripples spreading out. Sometimes people say to us, well, the family's so poor, why don't you sponsor 2 in one family? But actually, there's more benefit from sponsoring a child in 2 different families, because the family will be blessed. We actually sponsor, and this is Jocelyn that I met, and I went out to Uganda to meet Jocelyn. And her brother was actually able to do an electrical engineering course. So because of our sponsorship of Jocelyn, he wasn't sponsored and we didn't sponsor him, nobody did. Because of our sponsorship of Jocelyn, he was able to go on and train and get a job. Because the money, they share it. It just travels further. And with God, I love God maths, we often say, Chris and I say, we love God maths, it's amazing what he can do. So let me finally introduce you to Angela, my namesake, which is why we sponsored her. We actually only started sponsoring her when she was 19. I think she'd had a sponsor who'd had to pull out. So, you know, don't ever think it's too late. You can sponsor a child just for the last few years. She's now graduated from the Compassion Project because she reached the age of 22 when it finishes. I asked her, how has compassion changed your life? And this is what she said. Compassion helped me a lot. It really makes me feel special. I couldn't go to university if not for compassion. Most of all, I know Jesus. And this is the greatest gift of all, and the family of you and Chris that loves me much. I could not be here right now without medical help, which you have provided. So compassion saves my life in social, physical, mental, emotional and spiritual. Now, they don't all go on to university. I know the ones I've mentioned have said they've gone on to university. They don't all go on to university, although a lot go on to do things similar. But many are taught job skills. They're taught, Jocelyn was taught shoemaking, looking after chickens, sewing, skills that will give them a job and an income. And we've mentioned it before, the letters, haven't we? I think that one of the most powerful things is the relationship that Chris and I have had with our sponsored children through letter writing. And I really want to thank you who sponsor already enormously for that and encourage you to keep writing the letters. Even if you don't feel you're doing very much or they're really short. And I don't want you to think my hours are amazing. And in fact, I haven't written for a while and I need to get on with it. It's a job that I keep thinking I must do. But whatever we say and however short it is, those letters are powerful and life-changing. And I want to encourage you, as well as me, to keep at it. Let me tell you what Angela said about the letters. I've made the English a little bit more readable for you, but this is the gist of what she said. I have hope and always happy about you. And what I have achieved is due to beautiful letters of courage and hope you write, that always makes me to value the love and care as well as the support. Whenever I hear that I have a letter from you, it's beautiful to read. And I know I will receive another hope, another blessing, and it encourages me to increase my empathy and achievement. I read them often before I answer back. They keep me going. So although letters may be taking a little longer to get through at the moment, especially if your child lives deep in the forest, they will get there, as will your sponsorship money. So let me finish by letting some young people tell you their own stories. I've got a video clip now of just 3 more, I think it's 3 or 4 more lives that have been changed, but it's really good to hear it from them. So let's watch and listen.
In a given week, we'll go at least for 3 days without food.
The friends that I played with in the neighborhood got captured and was being trained to become child soldiers.
We would beg our parents just to buy 1 apple, but even the rotten ones we could not afford to buy.
In a period of 18 months, I lost my small brother Patrick, my mom, and I lost my stepdad because of the terrifying disease of HIV/AIDS.
When my mother died, I was lost. I was looking for hope, for God to just show me that everything was going to be okay, not knowing what tomorrow will look like, not knowing whether I would have a home. whether we would live to see the next day.
I don't know why Aaron Mitchell decided to sponsor me, but when he did, my whole life changed.
A group of people from Compassion showed up at my church.
They said, you're gonna go to school, and then somebody's going to write to you.
I don't have to worry about whether my parents would have enough money to keep me going to school.
Even if I get sick, someone was there to take care of me.
I felt safe. I felt wanted.
My sponsor is Edwin Bunny.
Maria and Hans Rowe.
Aaron Mitchell.
5 women from a Lutheran church that were sponsoring me.
I am now a physical therapist and I'm working in a hospital.
Clinical social worker.
I was the first child in my family to go to high school, to go to college.
I have a bachelor and a master in biomedical engineering, a second master in engineering management, and they called me into ministry, so I had to go and get a third master.
I have a ministry called Youth That Rise Africa that works with boys who don't have father figures.
We opened a small school. It's not providing the same opportunity that Compassion provided to me, so that they too can break out of the cycle of poverty. Whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me.
You do for me. You did for me.
You did for me. Sponsor a child today to break the cycle of poverty in a child's life, like my sponsor did for me.
Now more than ever, children need to find sponsors. I wonder, has God been speaking to you this morning? Maybe you've been challenged to sponsor a child like some that I've brought today. I've got 5 children who are waiting for a sponsor, like Carl, who is from the Philippines, or Deborah from Ethiopia. And I've got 3 more on the table who are waiting for somebody to change their life in the name of Jesus. It's £28 a month, and as you've seen, that sum changes their lives completely. It pays for schooling, medical, food, spiritual and social help. Maybe you can't afford that at the moment, but you could pray. Pray that you come to the point where you could afford to do that. Pray for the work of Compassion. On the table there are some Compassion magazines and some literature. Do feel free to take those away. Just don't help yourself to these sponsorship ones without seeing me, but the rest you're free to take. Pray for the work. But I would suggest pray for the time when you can afford to sponsor, because sponsorship is what is changing lives under God. Or you may be able to give a bit extra money. Above the money that's given above sponsorship money goes to support ladies like these, pregnant ladies and small babies who are under the age of sponsorship, because the survival rates of under 5s is so low that Compassion have started working from the point of the pregnancy through to sponsorship. Also, money given is helping emergency situations like Enoch's, for example, who wouldn't have had the operation and can't be afforded just on the sponsorship, but extra funds go in for special emergency situations or for COVID-19 supplies, as you've seen. So as I finish, thank you. Thank you from all the children, from your children. I just want to say thank you. The humbling thing is they often say to us that they are praying for us, which is amazing. So do come and see me afterwards. If anybody's got any questions, do come and see me. And maybe sponsor one of the children. As you do already write and sponsor a few, I have got a couple of leaflets with letter writing tips. This is something I've put together myself. It's not a Compassion leaflet. It's something I produced in 2018, but it gives you lots of hints for questions and things to help you write those letters. We are up to date with Compassion now, and you can actually text to sponsor. So you can text, you've got your own code there, Rossington Community Baptist Church. sponsor Roscom to that number, and it links you through to sponsor a child. So I'll leave that up for a bit. I can leave the information with Eric, and I just want to thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Angela. Thank you. Angela, thank you very much. Anytime I see like anything like that, it just rocks me right down to my socks. Since Angela has stolen all my thunder from the passage that I was going to read, just have a few words about it. There's a couple things I just did want to bring to light. I thought you did an absolutely brilliant job of bringing it all together. Very much appreciate the passage she brought about when Jesus went in, he saw, and there's some steps there. First, he saw the need. And unless we see the need, it's not going to affect us. But when Jesus saw the need, he had compassion. And then because he had compassion, he didn't leave it there. And I love the words she used. He actually did something about it. I don't know if you read the little bulletin this morning, but I got fascinated with the word compassion. And I've looked at this before, but I thought in preparation for today, I'd sort of revisit it. And if you go and look and dig around with the word compassion, it literally means to suffer with, to enter into someone else's pain and suffering. Calm and passion. Calm means together or with. Passion means to suffer, like as we think of the passion of the Christ, the suffering of Jesus. Not that we actually travel to the country and suffer with the child, but we do in a way in that we engage with the child and we support them through what is going on. I very much appreciate Angela's comment that the 28 pounds that we send does not stop with the child. And I've had this letter probably 3 years now, and you're probably bored of it, but it challenges and inspires me so much, I'll bring it up again. This is our little girl, Obvious, and I never will get over how she spent the little birthday gift. She says, "Hello, my friends. My family and I are okay. Thank you for the gift." Now she gives it, sounds like a lot in her currency. 185,000 of whatever it is, but it's like 5,000 to 1. Okay, so don't. Okay. Here's what she said. With what we had sent her as a birthday gift, I think it's 50 quid or something. 50 quid. They bought a goat for around 30 quid. 10 kilograms of posho, which I looked at, some kind of a corn, kind of a mush kind of thing to be able to make food. A dress for 4 pounds. A kilogram of nuts for a quid. A kilogram of sugar for £1.80. Bread for 50p. Out of all that, there was one thing that was for her specifically. A dress. Everything else was for the family. Everything else was for the family. And so that probably enabled that family to eat. And like Angela, I never really put the two together that when we sponsor one child, it trickles down and ripples out to everyone in the family. And I love that little picture. It's brilliant. Can I share with you for the last minute or so a sort of personal compassion story? Some of you have heard bits and pieces of this. I grew up, Mom was on her own from the time I was 10, 4 children. She did not have anything but a high school education, but she loved her 4 kids, and she worked very, very hard. Many times I remember having very, very little in the house. She would go quite often to a local blood bank, and it wasn't as a donation. They were actually offering to pay someone for their platelets, which is a component of your blood. So they literally, they'd hook her up, take a pint or so, they put them in a centrifuge, a spinny thing, take out what they wanted and put it back. Put back what they didn't want. The reason being, so then 3 days later she could go and do it again. The reason she did that was to put bread on the table for her kids. I played basketball as a kid, typical American sport. And there was one of the referees. His name was Mr. Gibson. I remember him to this day. Mr. Gibson was a referee and didn't know much about him. And he kind of took a shine to me for some odd reason, and I don't know why. But then one incredibly cold winter day, there was a knock on our door. It's around November time frame. If anyone knows of anything about America, we have this thing called Thanksgiving. Typically a big feast day, all that kind of stuff. Mr. Gibson was stood at the door. I didn't quite understand why my basketball referee was stood at the door. And he said, "We have some food we'd like to bring to family." And I was 10, 11 years old, didn't quite understand what it was all about, but I thought, wow, this is pretty amazing. A couple months later, there was another knock on the door. Mr. Gibson again. And Mom could only afford one lot of heating oil for a winter, and then if you got a harsh winter, and once it's gone, that's it. We did have a fireplace, so Mom would allow us to sleep downstairs. And I've never been in an open fire, but you'll get spits and spurts out. You know, remember all that if you've ever had a fire? We had a rug down there with many a burn there, so Mom said you need to keep back. She'd let us sleep down there as long as we kept back away from the fire, but it was typically the warmest place in the house. And Mr. Gibson was there. He said, "I've got some firewood that I'd like to give to you." And he brought us a massive truckload of firewood. And he said, "Could I get a couple of boys to help me?" So me and my brother helped him fetch it back to the back porch. I didn't realize Mr. Gibson was a Christian until years later. And I tried to find him to tell him kind of what I was doing. And I never could find him. Now here's the thing. In heaven, I think Mr. Gibson's going to realize the impact he had on a 10-year-old kid. Now, if you were to ask me, do I have any natural ability to do it? And I'm not saying that. I could never envision me doing what I'm doing now 40 years ago. I promise you that. But for anything that Jesus does in Russington or wherever, a lot of it goes back to the influence of Mr. Gibson. And here's the thing. For the little girl that we support, who knows what could happen through her or through her family because of the little bit that God has enabled us to do. Or for Emmanuel, who knows what God could do through Emmanuel in years to come. And that's the beautiful thing about this ripple thing. Now,